Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Jaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat. All together, before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is a very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the person. Nasta Pareshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. By remaining attendance in class on the Bhagavatam and doing service of the devotees, all this Om Jnana-timirandasya Dhananjana Shalakaya Akshara-Udmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Ignorance, spiritual master of my eyes with the knowledge of knowledge, offer my spiritual obeisances unto him. Mukam karoti vachalam pangam bangayate girim yat kripatam bande Shri Guru Dinataranam. Now for my respectful obeisances unto my spiritual master, the deliverer of the fallen souls, who mercy turns the dumb into eloquent speakers, and enables the lame to cross mountains. So, we're somewhere today. Canto 10, chapter 23, verses 10 to 13. All right. Ooh. Text 10. Deshakala Pritak Dravyam Mantra Tantra Vijo Ganai Devataya Jamanascha Pratur Dharmascha Yanmaya Tan Brahma Paramam Shakshat Bhagavantam Madokshajam Manusha Drishtya Dushpragnya Martyatmano Name Nire.
Deshakala Pritak Dravyam.
Just do one line.
Mantra, Tantra, Video,
Mantra Tantra Vidyohaya Devataya Jamanascha
Kartur Dharmascha Yamaya
Kartur Dharmascha
Yamaya
Tam Brahma Paravam Shakshat
Tam Brahma Sakshat
Bhagavatam Adhukshidam
Bhagavatam Adhukshadam
Manusya Drishya Dikshagnya Martyatmano Name Nire
Martyatmano Name Nire.
Desakala Prithag Dravyam
Deshakala Pritak Dravyam Mantra Tantra Vijognaya Devataya Yamanascha
Kartur Dharmascha Yanmaya
Kartur Dharmascha Manmaya
Brahma Paramam Sakshat
Tam Brahma Paramam Shakshat
Bhagavatam Adokshajam
Bhagavantam Adokshajam
Manushya Drishtya Duspratnya
Manusha Martya Mano Namenire. How do you do this all at once? What do you usually do? All at once? Desha. Desha, the place. Kala, time. Pritak dravyam, particular items of paraphernalia. Mantra, Vedic hymns. Tantra, prescribed rituals. Ritvija, priests. Agnaya, sacrificial fires. Devataha, the presiding demigods. Yajana,
and Dharma, Cha and Yat Maya Tam in Brahma Param Sakshat Bhagavan
Adokshajam, who is transcendental to material senses. Manusha Drishya, seeing him as an ordinary man. Prajna, perverted in intelligence. Translation. How do you do this? All at once too?
Yes.
Okay. Although the ingredients of sacrificial performance, the place, time, particular paraphernalia, mantras, rituals, priests, fires, demigods, performer, offering, and the as yet unseen beneficial results are all simply aspects of his opulence. The Brahmanas saw Lord Krishna as an ordinary human because of their perverted intelligence. They fail to recognize that he is the supreme absolute truth, the directly manifest personality of Godhead, whom the material senses cannot ordinarily perceive. Thus bewildered by their false identification with the mortal body, they did not show him proper respect. Purport. The ritualistic Brahmanas could not understand why the sacrificial food should be offered to Lord Krishna, whom they considered an ordinary human being. Just as a person with rose-colored glasses sees the entire world as rose-colored, a conditioned soul with mundane vision sees even God himself as mundane, and thus loses the opportunity to go back home, back to Godhead. That's a pretty big loss. Nate yad om iti prochur, naneti cha parantapa. Gopa nirasha pratyetya, tatuchcho Krishna Ramayo. When the Brahmanas failed to reply even with a simple yes or no, O chastiser of the enemy Parikshit, the cowherd boys returned disappointed to Krishna and Ram and reported this to them.
So they were
So-
passive-aggressive.
But could you imagine? I mean, they don't even look at you, they don't even answer. It's not like sorry or okay. It's just, it's more insulting. Tadupakarnya Bhagavan Prahasya Jagadishvara Vyajahara Punargopan Drishayan Lokikim Gatim. Hearing what had happened, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Lord of the universe, simply laughed. Then he again addressed the cowherd boys, showing them the way men act in this world. Purport. By laughing, Lord Krishna indicated to the cowherd boys that they need not be angry at the ritualistic Brahmanas, but should understand that one who begs will often be refused. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Staya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharni Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Satadesha Tarani. It's interesting how Krishna's laughing. It's like, no big deal. He already could understand the mentality of the Brahmins. I'm going to read you a little bit of a story and describe that. He could see that he already knew that they were materialistic and ritualistic. And so that's, he was a little bit disappointed. And Krishna knew that the Brahmana's wives, though, had been thinking about him for a long time, and that they did actually developed pure love for him. And so he directed the cows in that direction.
Coward boys?
Cows and the
Oh,
coward
cows.
boys, everybody. So we see here that the Brahmanas, they were more attached to their ritual than the goal of the ritual. And that's something to take note of. We look at them and they go, oh, you know, Krishna came before them and they're just stuck with their rituals. But if we look closely, we'll see that we all get stuck in that. You know, we have the ritual to get our rounds done. How much do we think of Krishna? You know, we're doing puja, you know, pujaris. You can just get into the ritual and you can forget about offering it nicely or what you're doing. So we're kind of laughing at them, but it's a predicament for all of us. And it's something to actually really look at, to see if we're remembering the goal of everything that we're doing. So this is a very picturesque pastime. And so I thought I would read you a rendition of it by Shivaram Swami in Nava Vraja Mahima. And it's really nice because it gives us many things to meditate on. When we're doing our rituals of puja or chanting the holy name or whatever seva we're doing, the whole goal is to think about and remember Krishna, isn't it? So part of our practice needs to be to have visions of Krishna, so that, not that they just come to us like a vision, but we can visualize Krishna because we've read about him, or we memorize certain verses, or we've read descriptions of him. And then when we're going about our daily activities, we can remember what we read and think of Krishna. And that's the goal of everything that we do. So I see many of you take notes. So as I'm reading, if you hit like a memorable line, you know, that you want to remember for the day, just like write it down. And then at the end, I'm going to go around and collect your memories. That's to keep you awake, because I know when people just read, you'll all be falling asleep. All right. There is a pastime along the stretch of the Jamuna towards the village of Batrola, where Krishna once blessed the wives of the Brahmanas to show that he values devotion over ritualistic observance. Raghunath Das Goswami praises the holy places Bhojanstali and Batrola. Quote, the beautiful, wealthy, and learned wives of the sacrificial Brahmanas voluntarily, happily, and devotedly fed Krishna and Balaram, and all their affectionate friends many varieties of 4 kinds of food, each dish surpassing the taste of nectar. We bow down to offer our respects to the place where Krishna enjoyed this pastime. Batrola is the village of the sacrificial Brahmanas, from where rice, bhakta, and other edibles were delivered by the Brahmanas to Bhojanstali, the place Stali, where the Gopas ate. So Bhojan, that's why it was called Bhojanstali, this particular place. One summer day, some months after Krishna had stolen the clothes of the unmarried gopis, so that's the pastime that was just finished before this in the Bhagavatam, Krishna, Balaram, the cowherd boys, and their cows were meandering down the riverbank towards Mathura. Krishna knew that ritualistic Brahmanas were performing sacrifices nearby, and that the wives of those Brahmanas were pure devotees, worthy of his mercy. So he directed the cows towards Batrola. The boys followed the cows as they headed towards the river, and Krishna indirectly signaled his awareness of those Brahmanas' petty-mindedness by glorifying the magnanimity of the trees. It was the middle of summer, but by walking in the shelter of trees, whose shade brought welcome relief from the intense heat, Lord Krishna felt inspired to speak to his friends. O Stoka Krishna, Amsu, Sridama, Subal, and Arjuna, O Vrishabha, Ojasvi, Devaprastha, Varutapa, just see these fortunate trees who can tolerate the elements even though they give us shelter from them. Let's hear some names of the cowherd boys. Everybody shout out one. Stoka Krishna. Amshu. Arjun. Uh-huh. Who? Sridham, yeah, okay. Yeah, and Subal. Devaprastha, yeah. The Gopas listed here from Stoka Krishna to Ojasvi surrounded Krishna and protected him on all sides. Devaprastha held an umbrella over Krishna's head, and Varutapa swept the path in front of him. Good visualizations. Like great saintly souls, these trees live to benefit others. This is Krishna speaking. Whatever we beg from them, leaves, flowers, fruit, bark, or wood, they give without hesitation. Thus no one goes away from them disappointed. To emphasize that one should use one's life to serve others, Krishna spoke this famous verse, quote, "It is the duty of every living being to perform welfare activities for the benefit of others with his life, wealth, intelligence, and words." That's from the Srimad Bhagavatam. To give emphasis to his words, Krishna caught the eyes of his friends. Krishna implies in this verse that there may be many humans and non-humans in this world who act as benefactors to others, but the trees of Vrindavan are special due to their elevated spiritual status. To facilitate his meeting the Brahmana's wives, Krishna directed his friends away from the fruit orchards, where they could have satisfied their hunger, to the river where they and the cows could drink. During the time Krishna spent in Vraja, rivers like the Jamuna, as well as lakes and even ponds, were full of clear, cool, auspicious water, fit for cows and humans to drink. While the cows drank to their heart's content, Krishna sat upon the exposed root of a tree. He looked radiant as he devised a plan to test the loving affection of the Brahmana's wives. On that day, the lunch Yashoda usually sent did not arrive. Judging from their own hunger, the boys knew that Krishna and Balaram must also be hungry, but they had left the fruit orchard far behind. The boys approached the two brothers who had detected the smell of musk in the air and said, "The Vedas say that hunger is man's worst enemy. Today, conquer that enemy by vanquishing our hunger." The scent of musk was from the thrown in the sacrificial fire. They could tell that the sacrifices were nearby. "Friends," Krishna said with a smile, "I emphasize with your plight. Go straight on this path towards Mathura. On the way, you will come to a village of Brahmanas, filled with many sacrificial arenas. Learned in the Vedas, these Brahmanas are just now performing the Angirasa sacrifice to enter heaven. Explain to them that my brother and I have sent you, and in our names, ask them for food." Krishna knew that these Brahmanas, though austere and religious, lacked devotion. They would surely ignore the boy's request, and such arrogance made the Brahmanas ineligible to receive Krishna's mercy. Their wives, however, though simple housewives, were devoted to Krishna, and he was eager to bestow his mercy upon them. Indeed, the Lord was going out of his way to do just that. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur tells us that some commentators say Krishna was intent on reciprocating with one Brahmani in particular, who was on the verge of attaining this 10th stage of love for him. Does anybody know what the 10th stage of love is? It's separation. 10th stage of love in separation is death. The implication is that one of the women in the Brahmana village was on the verge of death due to separation from Krishna, so the Lord wanted to save her from that catastrophe. Krishna and Balaram waited in a large riverside grove, and the boys set out on their mission. Krishna's words of warning freshened their minds. Remember, my friends, beggars must always be tolerant. I had a friend who I used to occasionally go on Sankirtan with, Leela and Rita. And at first when I was, just joined Krishna, I was really shy to go up and bother people. She says, the worst that's going to happen is they're going to say no. So it just kind of, it's what happens, people say no. The soft-hearted Gopas accepted Krishna's order. They were tired, but they joyfully made their way to the main sacrificial arena, where they enjoyed seeing the fire and the smoke and smelling the burning ghee. The singing of the Samaveda resounded in their ears, thoughts of the delectable food they would offer to Krishna dancing in their minds. The cowherd boys' mouths watered in anticipation. So it's kind of interesting because, we're really not supposed to think about, food before we offer it, but they were thinking about Krishna enjoying the food, right? The boys humbly approached the preoccupied brahmanas with joined palms and offered them prostrated obeisances, just as they had been taught at home and had seen their parents do. So, good little boys here. The brahmanas were falsely proud of their social status. They saw the boys as mere cowherds, so they could not recognize them as Krishna's representatives. In fact, the Brahmins didn't even greet the boys. Recalling Krishna's warning, the cowherd boys, whose radiance eclipsed that of the ritualistic priests, said, "O earthly gods, we are friends of Krishna and Balaram and request you to kindly hear us. Today we have come a great distance from Nanda's house, herding our cows and play fighting with one another. We have not brought any food from home. Now, like Krishna and Balaram, we are hungry." One boy said, "We come here as your guests. Since you are compassionate, charitable, and just like our fathers, we request that you give us some food to take to Balaram and Krishna." Krishna had told the boys to mention Balaram first, because the caste-conscious Brahmins would be more likely to give to his elder brother a Kshatriya than him a Vaishya. The Brahmanas replied, "Krishna and Balaram are not Brahmanas. We can not offer them food until after the Brahmanas have eaten." The boys then spoke the ultimate essence of the truth. But Krishna and Balaram are hungry. That's the absolute truth. Blinded by ritualistic injunctions, the Brahmanas saw Krishna as ordinary boys. They could not understand that by giving food to the Gopas, they would fulfill every detail of their sacrifice. So it may sound a little bit contradictory. The Bhagavatam said they didn't even look at them, they didn't talk. So that's one view. That was a commentary by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Sometimes he has conversations going on that could have happened on the side to get the meanings brought out. Blinded, did I read that? The Supreme Lord, the ingredient, the fire, the mantra, the offering, and the goal of all sacrifice, had personally approached them. Still, unable to recognize him, they had refused his order. The boys insisted, "Please, tell us whether you will give us food or not." But the Brahmanas ignored Krishna's emissaries and foolishly continued to pour ghee into the fire to appease the Supreme. "These boys are asking for food at an improper time," the Brahmanas whispered to one another. "The best way to get rid of them and make sure they don't return is to ignore them. That's what we'll do." But the boys were not so easily dismissed. They were on a mission for Krishna and Balaram and were determined not to leave empty-handed. They said, "There's nothing wrong with giving us food now. Scriptural injunctions set this time as an auspicious moment to give food, so please do so. But the Brahmanas, indignant that children would tell them what to do, ignored the boy's request. The Brahmins consulted among themselves. This is how Kali Yuga enters. These greedy boys are asking for unoffered food, and they want it for boys who some say are gods. But gods are never hungry. Having said this, the Brahmanas neither directly refused the boys' requests nor gave them food, even though as householders it was their religious duty to give charity, especially to hungry children. As Sukadev narrated this pastime, Maharaj Parikshit became more and more angry to hear of the Brahmanas' irreligious behavior. Seeing the king's reaction, the sage said, "Oh, subduer of enemies." So Sukadev Goswami is narrating this to Maharaj Parikshit. You see him getting a little bit riled up. He says, "Oh, righteous king, had you been present when the Brahmanas ignored the Gopa's request, even though they were the best of Brahmanas, you would have punished them like enemies." The reason these learned Brahmins ignored the boy's request included hard-heartedness from performing animal sacrifices, a lack of piety, and above all, the absence of Krishna's mercy. Previously, it was saying that because they had this arrogance, they weren't able to get Krishna's mercy. So this lack of Krishna's mercy is one of the reasons why they couldn't continue to perhaps get it. Finally, the cowherd boys concluded that they had failed to carry out their mission. Disappointment written on their faces, feet dragging, they returned to where Krishna and Balaram were waiting. The boys were reluctant to report their failure directly to Krishna, so they addressed Balaram. "Oh Rama, just imagine what happened to us. Although we requested food in your names, we were ignored. We have never met such insensitive, low-class Brahmanas. They completely ignored us. But even worse, they didn't even give us food, although right in front of us, they were cooking for their sacrifice." Turning to Krishna, their heads hung low in shame. The Gopas said, "Dear friend, we failed to bring back anything for you, and all we could consume was our pride and the smoke from the sacrificial fire." Intending to teach all those who are forced to beg by instructing his own dear friends, Krishna shrugged off the cowherd boy's dejection with a laugh and said, sweetly smiling, "Beloved friends, why should you show anger towards ignorant Brahmins or find fault with them? No doubt they were too busy to listen to your pleas. The nature of begging is that one is often refused. Still, you should never become despondent. Instead, let us develop an alternative strategy for achieving our purpose." The Gopas stirred uneasily. Did Krishna want them to return to the Brahmanas? "Your plan is beyond us," one of the boys complained. Krishna replied, "Go to the Brahmanas' wives instead and ask them for food." Oh. They let out a collective groan. Some even held their heads in disbelief. "We'll get the same treatment as we did from their husbands," they protested. Krishna raised both his palms to calm the boys and assured them, "The Brahmins' wives are different." But the boys were not so easily convinced. "In what way are they different? They're married to misers." Why should they be anything but misers themselves? Krishna patiently explained, "Because like you, they also love me." That's a good line. Taken aback by this answer, the boys inquired, "How is that?" Krishna said, "Just imagine. These women did not drink for 2 days nor eat for 3, just to see me." Eyebrows raised, the Gopas looked at one another. "Is that true?" "Absolutely," Krishna reassured them. The boys clapped their hands. "Wonderful! Then they must be different from their husbands." Oops. A spark of hope now twinkled in the Gopas' eyes. "Then we will go and ask them for food." Krishna interrupted with a warning. "Tell the Brahmanas' wives that Balaram and I are here. But don't tell them that we're hungry, because that news will put them into too much distress." The boys shrugged their shoulders. "Why would they give us food unless we tell them you're hungry? When the ladies see that you're hungry, they will also give you food for us." Still smarting from the Brahmanas' rebukes, the boys asked, "But won't their husbands stop them?" Krishna had confidence in the Brahmanis' devotion to him. "Nope. These women's minds always live in me. Only their bodies live in their homes. That's pretty cool. So that's for us, right? You know? Surely they will disregard their husband's objections. With fresh determination to fulfill Krishna's desire, the Gopas left Krishna's garden of creepers, all competing with one another to get there first. The boys went directly to where the Brahmanis were. The cowherd boys they make a game of everything, right? Who's going to get there first? Seated on golden chairs, decorated with ornaments, the wives of the Brahmanas, due to their intense feelings of separation from Krishna, radiated complete detachment from sense gratification. As soon as the boys saw the ladies, they thought, they are surely devoted to our Krishna. And at first sight of the boys, the ladies thought, who else could these Gopas be but Krishna's friends? We may wonder how the Brahmanas' wives had developed such attachment for Krishna. A combination of factors was responsible. Bards had passed through their village praising the Lord. They had occasionally heard the sweet notes of his flute, and while buying flowers from gardeners in Vrindavan, they had heard descriptions of his form, qualities, and heroic deeds. By hearing of Krishna, then, the Brahmanas' wives developed love for him. But because their husbands had thwarted their every attempt to see him, their purified hearts had been crushed again and again. The Brahmanis noticed the boys' flutes, sticks, and peacock feather crowns, and concluded that Krishna himself had arrived. They at once rose from their seats and offered their blessings to the boys. After bowing before the ladies, the boys said, "O gentle wives of learned Brahmanas, we are close friends of Krishna, and we offer our obeisances at your lotus feet. Please hear our appeal." Simply hearing the name Krishna caused ecstatic bliss to erupt in the Brahmanis. Some fainted, others were bewildered, and yet others wandered around saying, "What mystical mantra is this?" The cowherd boys tried to calm the women and command their attention, but when all else failed, they cried out, "Krishna's hungry, and you should give him food and his friends," to him and his friends. As the words, "Krishna is hungry," entered the women's ears, they snapped to attention. Their bliss barely contained, they surrounded the cowherd boys to hear more. The boys made the following appeal. "O wives of the Brahmanas, today we had no breakfast. We are extremely hungry from playing all day. Krishna, the reigning Cupid of Vrindavan, the object of your worship, has sent us to beg for food. He is waiting nearby with his elder brother Balaram, who is as powerful as Indra. Surely you must have heard about Krishna from the lips of devotees. As a baby, he mercifully made Putana his nurse. As a child, he smashed Trinavarta to earth, killed the giant Aga, and banished Kaliya from the Jamuna. Need we say more of he whose glories are like an ocean of all sublime things in creation?" The Brahmana's wives felt as if Krishna had suddenly appeared before him. The thought that they might soon meet him face to face melted their hearts and captured their minds. Ecstatic symptoms like tears, goosebumps, and shivering decorated their bodies. They were unable to respond, but the women still went to their kitchens and gathered a variety of freshly cooked food. The boys had not indicated any type of food in particular, and so the Brahmanis brought everything they had in their kitchens. Stacking pots on their heads, they followed the Gopas out of their homes. The boys and the Brahmanis marched past crowds of people who were milling about the sacrificial arena. You can just picture this, the boys and the Brahmanis with the pots on their head, and they're going past all this, everyone must be, what's going on, right? As they made their way to the forest, the ladies exchanged excited glances and restrained smiles. Every so often, the women would eagerly ask, "How much further?" The playful Gopas had run ahead to show the way to Krishna, encouraging the Brahmanis and guiding them with gentle voices. The weight of their love, combined with the weight of the heavy food they carried, made the women move too slowly for their anxious minds. They would occasionally run forward, only to slow down again. The intensity of the ladies' love nudged them to the threshold of madness. They scanned the forest for signs of Krishna, taking the drooping vines, for example, to be offering obeisances to him. Krishna responded to the Brahmanis' ecstatic zeal. He greeted them first with his unmistakable bodily fragrance. So Krishna has a fragrance that just permeates everything. It's said that if Krishna wouldn't touch some grasses, the cows wouldn't eat it. Because when the Krishna would touch the grasses, they would get the fragrance from his body, and it would permeate the grass. And then the cows could pick it up, and they would eat. So his fragrance permeates many things. Then his blackish effulgence, so then first they could smell, then they saw the effulgence. And after that, they heard his deep, sonorous voice. Finally, Krishna was there before the women in person. They paused for a moment to convince themselves that it was actually Krishna they were seeing, and not a mirage created by their eager minds. The Brahmanis saw Krishna strolling along the riverbank through a forest of ashok trees. His left arm rested on Subal's shoulders as he calmly chatted with his other friends in the company of Lord Balaram. To the women of Batrola, Lord Krishna looked just as they had conceived him to be. His complexion was cloud blue, his garments bright gold, and his bearing that of a dramatic actor. He wore a colorful turban decorated with peacock feathers, flower blossoms, and buds. A water lily was tucked over his ear, and a flower garland swayed as he walked, grazing his feet with every step. It was a big garland. Curly locks framed his forehead and hung over his cheeks, which were painted, just like his chest, with colorful designs made of minerals. His lotus face smiled as he looked directly at the ladies. In his right hand, Krishna twirled a lotus that broadcast two messages. Ladies, I have your lotus hearts, and I'm twirling them about. And the second message was, by your love, you have made my heart twirl in happiness. So it went both ways. The Brahmanis had heard about and meditated upon Krishna for a long time. Indeed, he had become the ornament of their ears, Karnipura. They were always absorbed in hearing about him. Their amorous feelings had become so strong that they could not hear their husbands' protests when they left to meet Krishna, just as the gopis had ignored their husbands when called by the flute. Now they observed Krishna from a distance, just as he observed them. The Brahmanis thought, today, at long last, the object of our meditation has appeared before our eyes. Our lives are successful. Still holding pots of food on their heads or in their arms, the women of Batrola welcomed Sri Krishna into their hearts and revealed their individual feelings of paramour love for him. Having waited so long to meet Krishna, the Brahmanis acted boldly, making Krishna lie down on the flower beds of their hearts, where they held him in their loving embrace for a long time. By Krishna's magical presence within them, they were relieved of the pain they had felt in the long years of separation. The bliss of reunion could be seen in the ecstasy that shone on their beautiful faces. Upon opening their doe-like eyes, the ladies also saw that Krishna was standing before them. They were enchanted that he was simultaneously in two places, in their hearts and in the Ashok forest. The ladies moved closer to Krishna, eager to be near him. They were still holding the pots and plates of food, and so Krishna began to laugh and put them at ease by greeting them with kind words. Krishna said, "Welcome, O fortunate ladies. Please set your pots on the ground and sit down. I can see that you have great love for me because, unlike your husbands, you have brought food for me." Krishna's voice resembled the rumbling of clouds. which soothed their minds. His words resembled drops of nectar raining from the sky, they thought. Just hearing him is the pinnacle of perfection. The Brahmanis sat around Krishna just as the gopis would do in the future. Krishna also spoke to them words similar to those he would use in his autumn evening discourse with the gopis. He said, "Your coming here befits your love. I know that you have overcome many obstacles, which has left me in your debt. The only thing I can ask is that you rest here for a while and spend time with me." As he spoke in this way, Krishna was aware that the Brahmani's wives desired to serve him in amorous ways. But Krishna decided that satisfying them would not nourish their mellow of devotion. So these Brahmani wives, it's a little bit different than the gopis. So there's a footnote here that says, what was it about the Brahmani's amorous attachment to Krishna that prevented the Lord from satisfying their desires? Why couldn't the Brahmanis become Krishna's maidservants just like the gopis? Jiva Goswami explains that it was socially unacceptable for the wives of Brahmanas to be maidservants to anyone. What to speak of a Vaishya like Krishna? If Krishna were to intimately mingle with the wives of the Brahmanas, it would potentially inspire criticism from his own devotees or even his friends. Reluctant to transgress social conventions, if that were to be the cost, Krishna considered that a platonic relationship with the Brahmanis' wives was the only acceptable option. Without nourishing rasa, incompatible feelings would mix and render their pastime less satisfying. Thus, to inspire them to return to their villages, Krishna addressed the women in a formal tone. The Lord said, "It is natural you are attracted to me in the matter of great souls. I reside within every heart as a supersoul, dearer to the individual soul than the body, the husband, sons, daughters, or family. As the indwelling guide of everyone, I always hold you close to me from within. Rather than remaining here, therefore, you should return to your husbands and help them complete their sacrifice." Despite Krishna speaking very softly and sweetly, the Brahmanis took his words to be like poisoned arrows. How could he send them away just a few moments after welcoming them and asking them to sit? Tears flowed from the women's eyes as they replied, "How can we give you up, the supersoul, standing before our very eyes?" "By obedience to my order," Krishna said, "which is to help your husbands." But the women of Batrola were not so easily dismissed after having been called by Krishna. In fact, they responded with the exact same words the gopis would later use to deny Krishna's instructions. The wives said, "O Almighty One, please do not speak such cruel words." And what of Krishna's promises to reciprocate with his devotees' surrender? Citing Krishna's own statements like "Yeyata mam prapajante" and "Mam eva ye prapajante," the Brahmanis insisted that Krishna allow them to remain in the forest as his maidservants. Krishna replied, "How can members of the Brahminical aristocracy like yourselves surrender to a mere cowherd like me?" The women shook their heads as if trying to shake Krishna's words from their ears. Krishna's rejection made the Rahu planet of the Brahmanis' pain devour the full moon of their joy. With cheerless faces, they abandoned all shyness and appeared to him in choked voices. "We have already surrendered our lives and souls to you by leaving behind our families and homes. Isn't it clear to you by now that we are no longer identified with the Brahmana community?" But Krishna persisted, "I'm a cowherd boy. Only cowherd girls are suited to be my maidservants or lovers." So this is actually, I don't know if the word's correct here, but an ontological fact. We can only have, or we as in living entities, jiva souls, can only have a conjugal relationship with Krishna when you're in a gopi's body. That's why you see that Lakshmi Devi, she couldn't gain access to the rasa dance. um, Shiva, he had to get a gopi body in order to do it, because that is the medium by which one has conjugal relationships with Krishna. So these women were in Brahmin bodies, and until their next birth, when they get gopi bodies, they couldn't actually have that conjugal relationship with Krishna. Krishna persisted. I'm a cowherd. Okay, I read that. Cowherd boy. Only cowherd girls are suited to be my maidservants or lovers. Realizing that Krishna was fixed in his determination, the ladies exclaimed, so be it. If you would be embarrassed to have Brahmana women as maidservants, then we'll just stay in the Vrindavan forest, satisfied by insignificant contact with you from a distance. We know that the nature of being your girlfriend or maidservant is rare and difficult to attain, so we will be satisfied to collect the tulsi leaves fallen from your feet and bind them in our hair. That's all. Almost swayed by their humility, Krishna asked, but what about your family members? The women laughed. Our husbands and relatives already rejected us. They'll never take us back. They have been suspicious of us ever since our youth, when you first stole our hearts. It was at that time that we heard stories of your form and sweetness from the garland makers and betel nut sellers of Raja. Ready to reject their families, desperate for Krishna's shelter, the wives touched their head to Krishna's feet, which they washed with their tears, and begged him to remove all obstacles to their love. Torn between the Brahmani's devotion and the best course of action for the occasion, Krishna finally concluded, pure love for me means to be dedicated to my happiness and to nothing else. Don't be stubborn. Please return home. The Brahmanis lowered their heads and made one last attempt to capture Krishna. Until today, we have never been outside our homes or even exposed to the sun. Having entered deep into the forest to be with you, the infamous rake of Vrindavan's forests, our family elders and husbands won't even allow us to return to the village, to say nothing of our homes. But Krishna was adamant. How could they reject you when we have had no intimate contact? Besides, the demigods, whom your husbands worship through sacrifice, are my devoted servants. Those demigods will advise your husbands that I am the faultless Supreme Lord and that your attachment to me cannot be impious. Rather, it is a sign of the topmost devotion. Don't be afraid. Finally, accepting Krishna's order, the wives inquired, but will our desire for an amorous relationship ever be fulfilled? Krishna reiterated his earlier argument I have already explained. People would criticize our intimacy, and that would hinder the fulfillment of your love for me. But if you long for me in separation, with your minds absorbed in me, you will attain me very soon. Lord Krishna then gave him the same instructions he would later give the gopis. It is by hearing about me, seeing my deity form, meditating upon me, and chanting my names and glories that love for me develops, not by physical proximity. Therefore, please go back to your homes. The Brahmanas sensed Krishna's resolve and understood that it was no longer appropriate for them to be close to him. They took the food they had brought and placed it on the leaves and plates. Then, one last time, they filled their eyes with Krishna's astonishing blackish form. Accepting the blessings he offered them from the corners of his eyes, the wives respectfully but sorrowfully departed. Krishna would also instruct the gopis to return to their husbands, but, unlike the Brahmanis, they would refuse and enjoy him in the rasa dance. But the Brahmanis would attain Krishna just the same. The difference between Krishna's reciprocation with the two groups of women was due only to social convention. The Brahmanis would simply have to wait until their next birth to be with Krishna physically. But the growth of their love for him would not at all be obstructed by time. One lesson we can learn from this pastime is that we can attain perfection solely by serving the Lord in separation. The conclusion is consistent with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings. By confidently serving Krishna in the mood of separation, surely we will attain his company at the time of choosing. Sukadeva Goswami speaks of one exception among the wives. There was one lady whose especially bad-tempered husband locked her in the house to keep her from going with the others to see Krishna. Disregarding her crazy husband, the Brahmani absorbed herself in loving thoughts of Krishna, who then appeared before her and said, "Give up everything and come live with me in Vrindavan." By the power of Krishna's mercy, Kripa Shakti, that Brahmani gave up her material body and was rewarded a spiritual form. Unlike her friends, she was immediately able to enjoy Krishna's company. But we should not think that Krishna neglected to bestow. I think there's a side point with this. Okay. Kavi Karnapur, who wrote Ananda Vrindavan Champu, he says a bit more about how this Brahmani achieved perfection. Upon leaving her material body, she was awarded a spiritual form. She then continued to live invisibly in the house of her husband. Every day she would go to the gopis in Vrindavan, who would train her in the transcendental art of serving Krishna. When she returned to her home, she would meditate upon what she had been taught. In this way, her husband's home became her bhajan kutir. As soon as the gopis recognized that the Brahmani was qualified to serve Krishna directly, they fully accepted her into their company and gave her access to the groves of Vrindavan. When Krishna saw this, he was pleased. But we should not think that Krishna neglected to bestow special mercy upon the other women of Patrola. Indeed, Chakravarti Thakur confirms that after leaving the Lord, they too were blessed. They did not have to leave their bodies. Their material bodies were transformed into spiritual forms, suitable for amorous love with Krishna. They had no more physical contact with their husbands. In his inimitable way, Krishna awarded the Brahmana's wives perfection beyond their expectations. Meanwhile, their mantra-chanting husbands offered oblations for paltry temporary gains. As the wives, can I go just a little bit more? As the wives of the Brahmanas arrived at Patrola, they were greeted by a miracle. Not only their pots, but also their homes had been transformed. They were now made of precious gems set in gold. Their husbands were prepared to banish them with harsh words, but when the Brahmanas saw that their village was now a veritable jewel mine, they restrained themselves and reconsidered. We have heard that infant Krishna once filled a fruit vendor's basket with jewels, and now we see that in exchange for food delivered by our wives, we have been blessed with unfathomable opulence. Realizing that this must be the work of the Supreme Lord who had appeared in Vraja as a Gopa, the Brahmanas greeted their wives with kind words and humbly acknowledged the ladies' spiritual superiority. The men had already come to regret their conduct, which caused the inauspicious death of one Brahmani. And now the transformation of their homes confirmed that their wives were rightly situated. In the presence of their pure devotee wives, the Brahmanas felt remorse. At last they condemned themselves for their blind ritualism and lack of devotion to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Each man saw the futility of his physical birth, Brahminical initiation, and initiation into the performance of sacrifices. To hell with our threefold birth, our vow of celibacy, and our extensive learning. To hell with our aristocratic backgrounds and our expertise in the rituals of sacrifice. These are all condemned because we were inimical to the transcendental personality of Godhead. So I'm going to end here because time is up. And just conclude that they finally felt remorse, and they offered some prayers, to the path. But the souls say that it was some sort of remorse, but if they really felt remorse, they would have actually run down the path and, offered their obeisances to Krishna and said, "We're so sorry for, forgiving you the offenses." So meanwhile, the cowherd boys, they had a great feast, and they walked more slowly home because they were so well fed. So it goes on a little bit longer, but we will end here. Does anybody have any meditations that they want to remember or share? I just want to take a question. Sounds like you have a. What stands out in your minds?
I have a comment. Generally, we also read from past times. People also read to us. When you were reading, it was really special. You're reading it in that way. So, yeah, I really relished it.
Thank you.
So much.
So what are you going to remember?
The part when you talked about when Brahmanis were going with their hearts to Krishna
Yeah.
and the feelings that they were feeling,
Mm-hmm.
and they were asking again and again to the cowherd boys, how far?
Right.
How far? And they were thinking as if vines are paying obeisances,
Yeah.
and they were just so ecstatic. They were walking slowly.
Yeah.
Sometimes they were running, and sometimes they were slowing down. Sometimes they were thinking about that. This is that moment was the fulfillment of all their austerities of separation from Krishna.
Yeah.
So that specific moment,
Yeah.
I will remember.
Right.
And also the second one was when you talked about the wife who was held in by the Brahmana,
Yeah.
angry Brahmana, and she went crazy in meditations on Krishna.
Mm-hmm.
Because of such intensity, like she left her body, her
Mhm.
material body, and she achieved spiritual form.
Mm-hmm.
So that in that moment, I would love to know, like, just to experience, like, what was she going through in
Mhm.
that moment of intense
Mm-hmm.
love for Krishna.
Yeah.
Those emotions, those
Mhm.
ecstasy, those pain and separation,
Yeah.
that is just the highest. And
Mm-hmm.
what she got after that was amazing.
Yeah. So when the Brahmanis first saw Krishna, what did he look like? What was he wearing? Golden dhoti, yes. Multicolored turban. What was behind his ear? A lily. Yeah. And his left hand was Subal's shoulder, yeah. And what was he doing with the other hand? Yeah, twirling the lotus, yes. And his garland, short? Long, yes. Brushing his feet. So you could just imagine, how beautiful he must have looked. And I never really thought about a blackish effulgence. Like Krishna is just so effulgent that, even through the forest, this effulgence is coming, right? And then they could smell the fragrance of his body coming. And then they heard his voice before they saw him. He was talking to his friends and strolling along the riverbank, shook trees. So we have lots to meditate on today. Mm-hmm.
I think there were 2 pointers that I was meditating on. The first one was when Krishna mentioned that these women's minds always live with me. Only their bodies stay at home.
Right, that's a good one, yeah. So we have to be the same, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Exactly. And sometimes, I mean, not to imitate them, but sometimes you feel that as well, like if you're at work or
Yeah.
at school, that you're always thinking about Krishna or the temple or devotees, and
Yeah.
your mind is not there. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that was very nice. And
Mhm.
the second one that I really liked was when
Yeah.
That was a very beautiful imagery of sorts, where the tears and separation were washing Krishna's feet, and that is what I think we should also aim for. And I think a lot of devotees say, cry, cry, cry,
Right.
and if you cannot cry, cry again.
Right. Gaur Govinda Swami's favorite famous line. Anybody else want to share?
You mentioned that when the Gopas, the cowherd boys approached the gopis, Brahmanas' wives, they were sitting on a golden throne, bedded with jewel.
Yeah.
There was a mention like that, right?
Yeah.
Sitting on a golden throne, bedded with jewel, and they are still in a detachment of any kind of
Yeah.
gratification.
Yeah.
That point kind of hit me.
Mm.
That even though having so much of opulence, they are
Yeah.
detached.
Yeah.
Here in material, what happens? Like we are trying to connect with Krishna. We are trying to attach with Krishna. Not 24/7, 2 hours of day. That's fine. But whenever we are not attached with Krishna, we are attached with something else. It's not that we are. Yes. It's not like we are completely detached or in loving separation with Krishna.
Yeah.
So that point kind of hit me.
Yeah.
I like the line where when the Brahmanas rejected or refused to give their food, Gopals, they came back and then Krishna advised them that we go to the wives. So they were like kind of, they were not wanting to saying that, oh, they will be the same. And Krishna said that, no, they are different. Because they're always thinking of me and they also love me just like you love me. So I like that line.
Yeah, me too.
Maybe one day Krishna will also say that for all of us.
Yeah. What did you?
Sorry, little clarification. You emphasized on the point that the gopis come, the Brahmanis come and they surrender, like, as you mentioned, that somehow their spouses have left. So, why does Krishna still, when they have come and surrendered totally, why does Krishna still says to go back? Like, why don't he, I know you said that, he has accepted them from his mind, their bodies stay there, but why he still recommends them to go back?
Well, it was this. It was explaining that Krishna didn't want to set a bad example that he had Brahmanas become like, because when the gopis and they consider themselves like maidservants, they just want to like do whatever he wants. So he considered it improper that a Brahmana would become like a maidservant for a Vaishya, because Krishna always likes to protect Brahminical culture. That we need to have Brahminical culture to hear scriptures from, and he didn't want to transgress that. And also, like I was saying, whatever bodies we have to wait until we have the gopi body to be able to actually have that conjugal relationship with Krishna. So he's just keeping it even. We all get that. All right. So your stomachs are probably burning like the cowherd boys. Or no, you have to go do your exercises, right? Whatever. Anyway, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.